Your Holiness, on behalf of everybody, please get better soon. We have, Your Holiness, changed the format somewhat today. Because of yesterday, the remaining 5 presenters will give their presentations one after the other.
Good.
Very, very quickly, just a few minutes each. After which, the topics will be open to the audience.
Good.
So they can make their contributions, or they can make their questions to the presenters. But of course, if His Holiness cannot answer questions, then of course we will not have any questions.
I will try.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You want 1 hour? Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with the 5 presentations, the first one is on death and dying. Thank you very much.
I'm presenting the topic Death and Dying on behalf of Anne. This is a rather condensed version of 9 months of dialogue she initiated. Death and Dying was selected as a topic to present to Your Holiness as a result of the overwhelming interest in the ODW community. And I'm going to read it because it's not my topic. Death and Dying. The dominant culture of the West is influenced by materialism and dualism. And these engender attitudes and practices that cause death to become the enemy rather than, I need to slow down, rather than a natural part of life. Death and dying as a subject can evoke fear and emotional disturbance, which would cause us to live in denial of death. On the other hand, we could think that death happens to everyone, is natural, and everything will be fine. However, if we have either of these attitudes, it is highly likely we will not prepare for death and will be powerless when everything we hold so dear is lost. It is best to have some understanding of the subjective experiences that occur when the mind and body separate, because it is said that the great catalyst for our hopes and fears is death. As students and practitioners of the Buddhist tradition for more than half of our lives, we have been extremely fortunate to have had access to teachings on the dying process and meditation practices that have a similitude to the dying process. We have been taught that an unwavering recognition of the absolute nature and seeing the illusory quality of relative phenomena will carry us through the dying process, no matter what arises. One of our group was a primary caregiver for her Buddhist neighbor. From the caregiver's observations, she saw how her friend prepared for her death by becoming familiar with what is written in the book, Advice on Dying and Living a Better Life by Your Holiness. When she was in the hospice, she asked her carer to remind her of the collapse of the 4 elements, the final 4 stages of death, and the association. Sorry. Oops. And the association. Sorry. This was condensed. And the association of subjective appearances. I'm very sorry. She wanted to die like a dog in a cave, as Your Holiness had said, without any distractions and attachments. When she was unconscious, at times she appeared to be distressed. Her carer quietly said in her ear that everything was going to be all right, and to remember her guru, naming him. She immediately relaxed and died peacefully. This is an example of how teachings on death and dying can benefit if they are put into practice. I would now like to introduce bereavement counselor Joyce McGrath.
Opening our minds to the reality and inevitability of death will open our hearts to the suffering of loss through death, bereavement. If death is seen as the enemy and one to be avoided at all costs, how then can we help ourselves or others to deal with the very real pain that bereavement brings? These days, huge resources are used in futile attempts to avoid death, often through medical intervention. This attitude of life at any cost frequently means that it is the bereaved who pay the price, often through lost opportunities to be with and say goodbye to a loved one, in the full recognition that this person is leaving, and for good. Loss is part of life, and we each create a personal history of losses as we move through this life. Finally, we lose everything in our own inevitable experience of death. But knowing, if we are involved with the loss of another, and knowing the pain of bereavement, we can increase our compassion and when others are suffering in their grief. At this time, death has moved out of community and into the hands of professionals. We've lost touch with the old ways of putting in place within family, community, and society the appropriate rituals and support. This can result in feelings of isolation that only add to the pain of grief. If those resources used to prevent death, where death is inevitable, were to be put to use in promoting acceptance of something that we cannot change, we would live in a very different way, possibly even a very different world. Death has gone underground. Personal fear has become generalized, and society at large supports the tidying away of that thing that frightens us. What cannot be tidied away, however, are our natural human responses. But people often feel compelled to do just that. How can a person know that what they're feeling is normal if these things are not normally talked about? Grief as a natural response to loss will make itself felt in some way. And this too can be a frightening experience. I see clients struggling to make sense of, to adapt to, and to accept the changes that a death has brought to their lives. Fear of death disables us and prevents us from reaching out, as though we have no hands or no hearts. Exposure to different belief systems and to different attitudes to death within other cultures can change the way that we act and feel and think. Bringing new attitudes to experiences happening to us within our own culture can enrich these experiences, both for us and for other people. Further enrichment could occur if East and West were to meet within us, combining our new understanding with our own cultural norms around loss and grief. I'm aware of the great work that the medical profession do in their field, and also that there is a growing movement towards natural death, and of course there is the hospice movement. However, these cater to the few rather than the many, so many continue to suffer. I just wonder what we can offer those in grief from our exposure to cultures both East and West. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Ilona. Florence. Next one is on action in the world and whether we can help in the name of humanity or in the name of Buddhism.
I want to respond
Oh,
the
sorry.
first part.
I'm sorry.
I
I'm
think
really sorry.
better, easier.
Okay, sorry. No.
Of course, that means no longer existence, at least this body. So all the thing which we develop some close connection within this lifetime, all then have to depart away.
No,
Have to separate. So therefore, even animal, you see the death, they don't like. So naturally we human being. But then, we are part of the nature. So death is a part of our life. Logically, there is beginning, there is birth, there is death. It's not unusual. I think our own, unrealistic sort of approach or unrealistic sort of view about death. So that causing, because of the extra, worry, anxiety. So firstly, in fact, Buddhist practitioner, it is very useful to remind daily about death, impermanence. There are two levels of impermanence, grosser level, a subtle level. Actually, the subtle level of impermanence is the real teaching of Buddhism. But generally, the grosser level of impermanence, that also is the importance or was a part of practice, because that reduces some of our destructive emotion, which based on feeling we remain forever. Look, you see, these great sort of kings or rajas in the West also, big castle, the castle Mare, fort. When they built that, these emperors consider themselves, they remain forever. So now when we look these things, it's rather silly. And the Chinese, sort of the famous wall, the Great Wall Kasa. You see, I think immense sort of suffering they are subject. But these, you see, work is carried with a feeling, my power, my emperor remain forever. Like Berlin Wall, some East German communist leader, they say this wall remain for 1,000 years future. All these, you see, come from their sort of grasping oneself and one's own sort of party or one's own sort of group, believe that remain forever. So that's, therefore, we need positive desire. Without desire, no sort of the movement. Desire must be there, part of motivation. But desire with ignorance is then dangerous. Desire with wisdom is very positive. We need that. So the sort of feeling of permanence that often create the firstly that kind of sort of view, I remain forever, ignorance, unrealistic, and then combined with that desire, want something more, it creates more trouble, more problem, obviously. So for Buddhist practitioner, it's very important to remind daily basis. Even if it's a tantric practice, the skulls or these things, and also visualize tutu kasa. Tutu.
Cemetery, funeral place.
Some mandala. You see, they visualize this what we call cemetery. So these, the symbol to remind us the impermanence. I often used to telling audience, because one day my car is passing through, cemetery way.
No.
Cemetery. So then in my mind, very fresh. So in the public talk, I mentioned, I just was passing through the cemetery.
Symmetry.
That's our final destination. We have to go there. So, as a Buddhist or even any sort of person, should be realistic. Unrealistic approach bring disaster. We must be realistic. I think the very purpose of education, you see, supposed to see helping us to reduce appearance and reality. So unrealistic sort of feeling develop on the gap of appearance and reality. So we have human intelligence, and yes, we get education. So very purpose of that, one thing, our mind should be wise, should be reasonable, should be realistic. Now modern education, one thing lacking, that is concern about warm-heartedness. Now there are some institutions, some university, now actually sort of carrying sort of some program and research work, and also actually you see they carry some experiment to student about a few weeks, some sort of part of their sort of study, and in their daily sort of study, some short sort of study, meditation, or I don't know, it's a training of mind about compassion. It makes change. After 8 weeks sort of training, it makes differences. So anyway, that's one aspect. Another now, education, usually, you see, the real purpose of the education is we should be realistic. And all our life, all our goal, even is destructive, like the terrorist, their goal, in order to achieve that goal, their method must be realistic. Otherwise, you see, before their goal achieved, they may die. Is it? So any human action must be realistic. Now in economic crisis, too much speculation without knowing the exact what will happen. Speculation and pretend okay. So out of ignorance and out of greed. So that also, you see, according to some, I use a friend, that also part of the causes of global economic crisis. So these, you see, sometimes you see, they know, but deliberately show different picture, immoral. So if realistically, I mean, if right from the beginning, tell truth openly, because of the transparently, then people, when that final announcement comes, people may not shock too much. Isn't it? Right from the beginning, make very clear. Now things are getting difficult. Isn't it? Like that. So whole our life, and then of course international relations or in any field, and also the environment issue. In any way, we should be realistic. So that's the general. Now our life, like death, we should be realistic. In any way, it is part of our life. Cannot avoid. Jesus Christ also at the cross, so of course, he showed his follower, they finally death come. And Buddha also similar. Or Allah, I don't know. New form, isn't it? Of course, Muhammad, of course, demonstrated that. So therefore, firstly, we should be realistic. And then, death, sooner or later, will come. But then, when it is much better, right from the beginning, if we develop some kind of attitude, that will come. then actual death come. You are sort of too much shock or too much sort of
Anxiety. And fear.
anxiety. Much less. Your word, death is enemy, is totally wrong. Death is part of our life. Of course, from the Buddhist viewpoint, even this body, in some sense, enemy. This creates a lot of problem. So if you consider death is enemy, then this body also enemy. The whole life is enemy. That's a little bit too far. No. Now, actually, in order to develop genuine desire from Buddhist viewpoint, for moksha, salvation, now we need that kind of, sort of attitude. This very birth, this body, the sort of also the in the very nature is suffering nature. So we want to seize that. And how to seize this second noble truth? Now mentioning.
No, the contaminated actions.
Should stop. For that, contamination, not due to sort of environment, but contaminated because of wrong view or ignorance. Therefore, in order to remove, in order to stop the contaminated sort of karma or cause, firstly, we must remove the ignorance here. So that's Buddhist way. But ordinary, I think better to say, our life is very nice. And that also is, according to Buddhism, you see, the Phunzutishi.
The four excellent ones.
You see, good life.
Factors in life.
And in order to achieve happy life, good life, you need facility. For that, you need money. So, the first two excellence, right?
No. Factors of excellence.
Ngundu Phunzo, and Ti Duji Nor.
Which are the higher rebirth, and then in order
High
to
rebirth
achieve
or just human rebirth.
human rebirth, and then the facilities which give rise to that.
That's money.
No.
Mention money. Then, for long run, our goal should be, the nirvana, permanent cessation of these ignorance, these was a destructive emotion. So that's the permanent solution. For that, we need practice of dharma. So ordinarily, you see, our body, compared with an animal, other form of life, our body is very fortunate because we have this marvelous brain. We have the ability to develop infinite altruism. And we have the ability to investigate ultimate reality. Any form of life with less sort of sophistication of human brain, no ability to do that. So all as the ordinary sentient being, slave of ignorance. Now we human beings, with this brain, have the only human brain have the ability to know the faults of these ignorance. So therefore, human body is something tsachama.
It's precious.
Precious. So we need every sort of protection this life. So 1,000 years, we only sort of pray to some of these deities supposed to bless us longevity. Now plus that, you see, the modern medication or exercise, including yoga exercise, this is also very useful in order to protect this precious body, isn't it? Now, in spite of that, their final day come. You should accept. There's no other way. This is not strange. Then the individual who believe faith, like theistic religion, then should think that this very life is created by God. So they end also according to God's plan. Although I do not like to see death, but God created. There must be some meaning. Those people who truly believe Creator God, thinking that line. Then, according Indian sort of the tradition, who believe life after life, rebirth, and then think about future life and make some effort to create, the cause, right cause, and for future good life. Instead of worry. For example, dedicate at the time of dying, all your virtues should dedicate for next good life. And then, at the time of dying, the mind, the mental state must be calm. You see, anger, too much fear, these are not good. If possible, you see, for a Buddhist practitioner, then this moment, you see, look forward about next life, and then accordingly, you see, the practice of bodhicitta, practice of certain tantric practice, these, they're good. And they, particularly, according to tantric teaching, tantric practice, at the time of death, the dissolution
of the elements.
Those grosser level of body element dissolved. More subtle level, that also dissolved subtle level. So 8 stages. Those practitioners in daily life, see, in your meditation, all these involve and meditate. I myself also, you see, every day I think different sort of mandala practice, at least 5 times death. So still I alive. This morning also is 3 death already occurred. So like that. So these are, you see, the method, you see, to bring, to create guarantee for good life, because of good life, our next good life, like that. So, and then non-believer, as I mentioned earlier, be realistic. That's important. So all because of two common reviews, which is one. That is the answer. Now next.
The subject of this presentation, action in the world. Should we act in the name of humanity or in the name of religion? We were young and foolish, full of ideals and willing to learn. Life was absurd, we thought. From birth to death, action, 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 and very little wisdom. We were hungry for self-transformation, enlightenment. Meeting, finding Your Holiness and all the great Lama was like finding a lifeline. And so we took this big jump, Buddhism. Your Holiness, my friend Jeanne, she has helped us in all the presentation but could not come. Could you just keep it for some time? She feels so blessed.
No, de hospices also.
That's very important. So those people who actually is dying, the surroundings of people, if possible, some knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, those dying person who believe God, Creator, then reminds them God. And a single-pointed faith to God, it at least some benefit from the Buddhist viewpoint also. And then those sort of people who have no sort of belief, no religion, then as I mentioned earlier, because the realistic and important is try to keep their mind more calm. Perhaps at that time, some relative close the dying person and crying like that may harmful in order to keep calm mind. Too much attachment. Then also possible, because too much attachment towards the relative, so there is possibility to develop anger about the cause of death as an enemy. So that is important to keep, try to keep their mental state calm. That's important. So auspicious way.
No.
Many occasions I sort of request those Buddhist center, like in Australia, the Lama sort of the nunnery, these nuns totally dedicated, taking care about these sort of was a dying person or because of illness, serious illness. So these are very good. We must implement our daily practice of compassion in action. That's very important. So that's the color.
No.
What's the main point? What?
Action. Action.
Action for?
In the world stage.
Should it be in the name of humanity or in the name of
No.
Or humanity?
No. Humanity, Buddhism.
If you try to promote basic human values on the basis of Buddhist teaching, then it becomes narrow. It cannot be universal. So that's why 1,000-year-old India's tradition, pluralism about religion and secular, see no preference of one particular religion, respect all religion. So now ancient India, beside homegrown religion, all major religion eventually settled in this country. So last at least 2,000 years, all major world religious traditions lived together in this country. So naturally, because of that reality, you see, they developed the secular ethics. So very good. So when we talk, you see, the happy humanity, peaceful humanity, more compassionate humanity, and ultimately the real answer, these terrorists, and also using force. We must make effort. Today's reality, everything interdependent. Europe's economy, Europe's future depend on Asia or Middle East or America. Likewise, and also the Chinese future depend on rest of the Asia and the rest of the world. So that's the reality. So on that reality, according to that reality, hardly make demarcation. This is enemy. This is this is friend. I think no solid basis about the demarcation of enemy and ally. So, according to this reality, now we should create big we rather than we and they. In ancient time, 1,000 years, the solid basis of we and they there. On that basis, according to that reality, the destruction of your enemy, they, is your victory. So consider war part of human history. Now today, the reality of the world is completely new. So we must consider every sort of part of the world is part of we. We have to take serious sort of respect or serious consideration about their well-being. So then there's no room about violence. So these are, if we stress on religious faith, then too many. So therefore, only sort of way, practically, realistically, only way is without touching religion, simply the secular ethics. That I fully committed. I am Buddhist. If someone showing interest about Buddhism, sometimes I feel happy. But I never try to propagate Buddhism. So religious faith is individual business. The sort of, the secular ethics is the entire human being sort of kasuda, a business. And also including environment, like that. Then? Yes, now next. Finish. Thank you.
So, all these years later, 30, 40 years later, we found that we had actually to do a lot of action all our life. And that's
all the actions also. Action, as I mentioned yesterday. Prayer, no real effect. Real effect, action. That's why Buddhism say karma. Karma means action. So we must be active.
So should we do action as private people, or should we do action as Buddhists?
Mike, please.
Oh.
Action should take believe I'm one of the nearly 7 billion human beings. I have the responsibility to take serious concern about the well-being of nearly 7 billion human beings. Like that. So when we pray, for example, Buddhist pray, we always say entire sentient being. No Buddhist say only for Tibetan case, only for Tibetan. Never pray that way. Or just this world, no. Infinite world, infinite sentient being. So we must implement that. Otherwise, our prayer become hypocrisy. Pray something very nice and doing something different. Isn't it? Pray on the basis of big we. And actual karma, action, based on strong base, we and they. That's a hypocrisy. Oh, good.
Good afternoon, Your Holiness, and everyone. I just want to begin by thanking Your Holiness for your advice in 1998. The mantra, DDDDD, together with hard work, and these were weird but wonderful speech techniques, have helped me overcome a pretty severe stammer to speak here today. I believe we should be ready for Karl Marx's prophecy of the collapse of capitalism to come true anytime soon. Most Western economies are almost bankrupt and need rapid growth to repay their huge debts. In 2007, a top British economist, Will Hutton, told a seminar of top Chinese economists he thought China's economy was quite unstable. They replied,
unstable.
They replied the situation was much worse than he had portrayed. The Chinese bubble might burst. That this possible economic and political revolution is an opportunity for a spiritual revolution, possibly the end of the materialistic world as we know it, prophesied by several major religions, with the coming of a messianic figure, Maitreya, Kalkin or Christ, perhaps all in one. One of your Holiness scientific gurus, the renowned physicist David Bohm, has explained the spiritual dimension is just a much more intense level of background energy, normally ignored by physicists. He says the amount of energy in 1 cubic centimetre of space is very far beyond the total energy of all the matter in the known universe. Every atom is full of space. This makes ours a completely and very powerfully spiritual universe. This appears to be the metaphysical, spiritual energy of our Atman, which goes from life to life. The spirit of Brahman or God in everything, in every rock and tree and planet. Shunyata, perhaps. Metaphysical simply means beyond the physical.
Of course, my knowledge very limited in this field. Firstly, the Karl Marx's economy theory. I very much attracted towards the point in his economy theory. He very much concerned about equal distribution. So there is moral ethics. Whereas capitalism, not talking that, just how to make profit. So therefore, socio-economic theory is concerned, I'm still Marxist. Then the so-called socialism, which practice former Soviet Union, and in early period of China and some other sort of socialist country, their economy eventually faced some what called stagnation. That also fact. So Western capitalism, more dynamic force as far as economic development is concerned. So under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, he forced to sacrifice their Marxist sort of economy practice. He voluntarily followed capitalism. Now problem, Chinese case, not necessarily, I think all the difficulties China facing today, I think cannot blame on capitalist system. I think in free country, the capitalism there, but at the same time, the independent judiciary and free press. And then basically, you see, the media carried the principle of transparency. And then elected government, accountability. So these are the capitalism, they're just free, but other sort of method make more balance. Now China, just capitalism, no independent judiciary, no free press, no accountability.
Accountability.
So, the judiciary controlled by party, economy controlled by party, press controlled by party. So that's the main reasons, some problems now facing China. Immense sort of corruption. There's no proper sort of method to check these things, just death. Death also, those poor people who make some corruption, then they become target death sentence. But a higher position, they are above law, like that. So that's the reason. So actually, when Berlin Wall collapsed, former Eastern European countries get freedom. For example, Czech, and then Czechoslovakia. First foreign visitor, I think, to Czechoslovakia Republic, on the invitation of President Havel. So, and then also you see those Baltic states, and also Hungary and Bulgaria. I never been Romania and former Yugoslavia. I think Kosovo, I think once I was, Croatia, yes, Croatia, and Slovenia, yes, that's right. So mainly, when I first visited Czechoslovakia Republic, I expressed, now this is maybe right time to carry more research work. Those good part of socialism take, good part of capitalism take, and some kind of new synthesized sort of economic system may be possible. So I expressed, but then that just become empty word. So of course I myself, no knowledge. So like that. So now here we must, I think as I briefly mentioned yesterday, Western lifestyle, generally, or not just Western, but more materialistic society. Now in India also, isn't it? No? More materialistic sort of community. Listen, their sort of enjoyment seek from sensorial sort of window, one drama or picture, cinema, like that, or music through ear, or good food, good smell, and good touch, including sex. So these are just seeking satisfaction, completely relying on external sort of fare, external sort of means, and through sensory level. I mentioned yesterday already. So the ultimate source of inner satisfaction is training of mind, not relying on these sensorial, the experiences. Then, so now seems, as I mentioned earlier, mainly, I think, academic center, now more and more people really feel the importance of taking care about our emotion, about our mind. This is a very healthy sign. And then another problem, the rich and poor gap. This is a very serious matter. When I was on one occasion in Washington, one big sort of public talk gathering, I mentioned this is the capital of the richest country, but in suburbs in Washington, there are many poor people, poor families. So that is not only morally wrong, but practically also source of problem. Nowadays, like September, because 11th, September 11th sort of event, this also is connected with that huge gap. Arab world remain poor, and there are natural resources, maximum exploitation by the West. So the public sometimes you feel unfair. So this is a very, very complicated sort of situation. So we must, I think Buddhist community also, you see, should pay some action, some karma, at least surrounding sort of the
neighboring countries.
your area. Try to take care, at least some kind of sort of mentally give them some hope, some self-confidence. I often is telling my Indian, they would say, the low caste, and many of them Buddhist, the follower of Dr. Ambedkar. I always is telling or sharing with them, they say this gap, rich and poor, must change. But here, the poorer section of the people, instead of slogan or some frustration, must build self-confidence. We are same. Even Brahma, you see, from forehead, you see, these four, because of caste, you see, create, but same Burma, isn't it? So must be equal. So, if we reduce, so therefore, I always insist the education, the poorer section of the people, and then richer sort of section where wealthier section should provide them facility, education, training, and instrument. Let them build their own let them
Earn the own
grow their living standard. And also in few occasions in Africa, I also express that. The southern world, very difficult. The northern world usually is having surplus there. The southern basic necessity not sufficient. So we must, all these are same human brothers, sisters. Another thing I want to share with you, we too much emphasis on importance of secondary level, nationality, religious faith, or caste, or these things. In order to segue, in order to bring some benefit to secondary level, we're forgetting basic human level. That is a problem. I think, unfortunately, like Copenhagen Summit, the important nations take more interest about their national interest rather than global interest. So that's why we are facing many unnecessary problems. So we must make every effort to educate people. We are same human being. The number one, we should take because of the right or because of a certain right for basic level, human level. Then second level, religious community, different nationality, second level. Realistically speaking, like China, I always telling people, China, no matter how sort of powerful, but still part of the world. So the future of China have to go along the world trend. Like that. So we must consider entire, nearly now 7 billion human beings, just like one entity, one big human family. That I think we really need. Not through preaching, but through education and using common sense. That's very important. So we Buddhist community, I think, beside your own daily practice as a Buddhist, so think more these lines. If you try to, like, you see, there's some Christian missionaries, I really, you see, appreciate, I think Christian brothers, sisters, I think made greatest contribution regarding education on this whole planet. No other religion, you see, do that. Now in India, recently Ramakrishnan, you see, doing something. Otherwise, all religious sort of groups remain in their own, temple, and collect some money. You see, we must be active. Promotion of the better society, happier society. So on that level, I think Christian brothers, sisters, I think really tremendous service to human being. But meantime, they also carry some work for conversion. That's a complication. One time in Kasa, Holiness, America, Kasa, Salt City Tea, Mormon or something. Mormon. No. Near there, one organization, Christian organization. Mormon. Oh, so you see, they Momo, yes. Momo is delicious. So you see, this one time I was there, they invited their headquarters. I met their leaders, and then later one public talk. I mentioned those missionary worker, those area where no sort of solid religious sort of tradition, then good. Convert Christianity. And there is solid sort of philosophy or good. Very good. But then those area where traditionally some another sort of solid religious sort of belief there, then conversion creates more clash, difficulties. Although I didn't mention at that time, the example is like in Mongolia. Some Korean Christian missionaries, you see, they carry very, very seriously about conversion. So they provide money. One conversion take place, they give $15. So Mongolian also is quite clever. Every year conversion. so every year getting $15.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so Your Holiness, we'd like to thank you very, very much. We love you incredibly, and we want you to save your voice. But thank you so much. And in saying thank you, we have one of us to present a kata. This is Marian. She's been with us here for 38 years as a Buddhist and in Dharamsala. She's our representative to say thank you.
Okay.
And we weren't able to offer, just wait a second. Now, we weren't able to complete all of the topics, so we hope that in 5 years we can meet and have another meeting with you, and we'll conclude the topics we had. Sion would like to offer you something about Dzogchen and science. It's for you to review.